Space, the final frontier. Well, okay, not really. All right, take two. Here in the Mitten State, welcome to Code 47, bringing you all things Star Trek, spanning the quadrants, the best thing since the neutral zone.
Hello, my friends. Back again, episode 111. Oh, I hope that's not a curse. At least it's not 666. Yikes. Of the Code 47 podcast on the Secret Friends Podcasting Network. I am your humble host, Trek Lord of West Michigan, which is not a humble statement. I understand that. What a contradiction. Charlie Carden. And I am here with my partner, Jen Watson from Chicago, who has not been on the show in a minute because of moving from the Alpha Quadrant to the Beta Quadrant. So that's a big move.
Yeah, pretty much.
And with no wormholes to hasten up the trip. So no, you've had a relocation thing going on for about a month or so now, I believe, and you finally land.
And the house feels like season 1 of DS9.
Gotcha. Very fuzzy, standard definition. Makeup doesn't look right. Sets aren't quite. The plots aren't so great. Yeah, no, I get that. I totally get that. But yeah, no, happy to have you. Happy to have you back. Happy to have you back. And we'll strategize about talking about some more Sequest DSV over on the Patreon. Oh my God, did you catch out that segue? But no, we are very grateful to have a number of wonderful folks who do support us over on our Patreon over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Gives us the chance to create wonderful additional content. Much like, as I'd mentioned, the fact that several months ago, Jen and I talked about the first season of the awesome NBC, I believe, science fiction program Sequest DSV, which I'd never seen before, in the Facts of Geek Life, which is one of those great programs. So feel free, again, to visit patreon.com/secretfriendsunite to do a 7-day free trial. Check out that show. Check out several of the other shows the rest of the SFU compatriots do. Our top tier friends are friends with benefits, Corey and HD, John Sidorf, the awesome Phoenix Sisters cosplay, and Brendan Myers on the BFFs level. Excuse me, that's the top tier. Sean Stella and Henry Nias, the wonderful Nias family, my dear friend Missy Merchant and Andy Milliken. We are glad to have you all. Again, visit patreon.com/secretfriendsunite for a free 7-day trial. And if you like what you hear, please feel free to stick around. Well, unlike other weeks, it seems like we've had a string of weeks in a row where there was some significant news to report. I know that the writer strike definitely ended prior to our previous episode. Yay! But the actor strike is continuing to grind on, the SAG-AFTRA strike. There was some hope this week, going into the weekend. In fact, there was a quote from their chief negotiator on the union side that said they felt very hopeful, cautiously optimistic, I think was the word, that they were going into recording negotiations this weekend. Today is Sunday. I had read that there was events happening, meetings happening yesterday on Saturday, but I've not seen a headline addressing it one way or the other. So I am, again, not holding my breath. However, that does mean that as we continue to grind down, we are getting close to the end of being able to talk about new material in the first segment of the show, which kind of bums me out. We do have some plans. We've been talking collectively as a group about where we go next.
Sneaky secret plans.
The first episode of which will actually be a suggestion by Jen that I don't know if she remembers she made. But it's on the
remember that, and it's still relevant. So
it is very relevant. So we will be talking about that. But again, getting into segment 1, we're talking about episodes 7 and 8 of season 4 of Lower Decks. And then we've all seen episode 9 and then episode 10. It was funny. I got my episode 8 screener. I was gone all week for work out of state. Didn't watch it until Thursday, like the rest of humanity, but I haven't seen the last one, but I'm expecting I'll probably get that screener like Monday, Tuesday. So at least I'll have seen the season finale. But I'm very excited to talk about episodes 9, and then episode 10 just sounds like it's going to be a barn burner. But before we get there, Jen, if you would be so kind to read the description of episode 7.
All right. We have a few badgies more. 3 computerized villains return to cause problems for the Cerritos crew.
Wow. Crazy situation. I just rewatched these this morning, which I was super excited about, because we get the big return of our kind of big three. I would say satirical villains, but again, everything on the show is kind of satirical, with the exception of probably even Moopsy from earlier this season was satirical to a
I
point.
love Moopsy so
I
much.
know, and the Moopsy merch is really starting to pontificate, which I absolutely love. But yeah, we're getting back Agamus, we're getting back Peanut Hamper, and we're getting back Badgie.
Badgie.
And what an incredible deconstruction of that character, because Badgie and the episode's kind of bookended by was it the end of season 2 where there was where there was the big blowout with Badgie, and then Rutherford was injured and lost his basically lost his AI headpiece, and then Jax apparently died, and then he came back, but that was never explained, but it ended up being great for comedic
Black Mountain and the koala.
the Black Mountain and the koala.
Yeah.
But yes, so yeah, we do find out that scavengers snagged Rutherford's AI. Badgie popped out of it, but then he took over that scavenger vessel and led to our people being drawn to him. And a situation where Rutherford and Mariner get a team with just the two of them, which I feel like never happens.
Yeah, that was cool.
And that was a pretty cool connection. In the meanwhile, we get Agamus on parole, saying he has information about or wanting to be on parole as seeming to have information about the core story of the plot line of the season, which is these vehicles this vehicle approaching all these different non-Starfleet, non-Federation vessels, or non-Starfleet, I should say, and seemingly wiping them out, but finding out in the course of this episode, or maybe it is revealed in this episode, that they're really being abducted, and that does actually play out in episode 9, which not to spoil. But this was fun. I liked and then the third thread was Peanut Hamper, who Agamus thought was conspiring with her to do ne'er deals, and then she didn't end up doing that, and then we end up getting a call back to Tycho 7 or whatever the planet is with the particle fountain, which was the genesis of the exocomps
from TNG.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, from season 6 of TNG. So I enjoyed all that greatly. Fun threads. I love the captured shuttlecraft. And again, the second mission, the B story was Tendi and Boimler with Agamus, and they ended up on a beach, and it's fun to see Tendy's making a sandcastle. She says, this is great. The best that we have at a beach on Orion is a bunch of sharp rocks, and she's making a sandcastle, and with her shoes off. It was pretty cute. So it was a very fun episode. The whole bit with Badgie splitting himself into Good G, Badgie, and very clever.
Good G and Logic-y.
And Logic-y, yeah. So Badgie ends up splitting himself between good and bad, and then a logical component. So the Badgie is just completely out of control. Super crazy AI, manages to proliferate himself throughout the known universe, but in a very V'ger-like kind of scenario, gets this self-actualization and then chooses to ascend to the next level of existence. So there's a lot going on in this episode.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah. So give me your take. What are some of your favorite moments?
Oh man. So I really like the fact that Rutherford really just went for that. I'm going to use the power of friendship and bring Badgie back, and I'm going to give him a hug and be his father. And that's what caused him to split off into Goodgie. Right. And the use, he's like, oh, well, that's weird. That didn't work. Let's use the logic, the Kirk approach against the renegade AI and the Logic-y. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Logic-y is copper, like Vulcan blood is.
Right.
So that was a neat, I don't know if that was intentional, but a lot of things on Lower Decks are.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I don't know. But I liked quite a lot of this. I was surprised because I don't like Peanut Hamper. It's Peanut Hamper is the one thing on Lower Decks that I'm just like,
It's a little bit too silly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very
not even that. It's that as a character, in the the previous season, I think it was the previous season, that the mathematically perfect redemption is the one episode of Lower Decks that I just do not like.
With the Birdman,
And
with her and the Birdman.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
that must have been last season.
it
Yeah.
was because she was not redeemable in that. And it just kind of went against so much of what I like Star Trek to be. But it
Yeah.
also says, like, I mean, she did kind of redeem herself in this one through, the therapy, and you see the at the center for the Rogue AI, where they're like in circles of therapy, and they're
I
like
love the
they've
two.
got
It
them
was
in the gym.
the
And they're just, like,
therapy
sitting
circle, and
and paying attention.
it was the gym, but there was a basketball just sitting there. But
Yeah.
you have Alexa. Basically, it's a bunch of hard drive towers, like you would see at a computer.
just
So nobody
sitting
has
around
arms.
in the gym.
So how is that a basket? That's it's just the patently absurd that this show
Yeah.
does so well.
Yeah, and
Without a
I
doubt.
like the absurd. I like the koala. I like when
Yeah.
it's just like, giant floating head. It's like Star Trek has always been weird, and
Right,
this
right.
just, it's another celebration of the weird of it
Yeah,
all.
absolutely.
Peanut Hamper and Agamus reminded me of, like, robot Harley Quinn and Joker in a way.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He just wants her back, and she's like, "No, I'm doing my own thing with my family now." Like, the post redemption Harley, that is, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a literal Deus Ex Machina with
Yeah.
Badgie ascending, but it was a way to bring them in and show that neither Badgie, Agamus, nor Peanut Hamper are behind the ship, the main ship of the season.
Yeah.
Because that was a big theory of mine, actually.
Yeah,
and
I
a theory
agree.
I've seen floating around the internet, too.
And even, at the end of last season, we were talking about, there's going to be a big team up episode. You're going to put these three AIs together and they're going to wreck shop. It's going to be something epic. And they gave us this instead, which is, I think, without a doubt, what this show really does best, right? They really deliver on doing the unexpected, and then doing it in a way, doing it in a way that's charming and fun and makes you smile and laugh. And they just nail it. Now, obviously, as we've talked about through, 4 seasons of the show, and granted, I was doing some research today and I had forgotten that they had confirmed back in March for a 5th season. So that's definitely something that's going to go down. The show will go on, of how they continue, to delight us, which is great. Not that they don't have Duffer episodes. You talked about the bird one, and there are a few really gross out ones. The holodeck one where you saw Boimler's butthole blanked out. It's like they just every once in a while, they'll hit on a bit that it's just kind of a bridge too far. But on the whole, that's 5 to 10% of the overall experience of this show is having it not hit. And I think the one with the bird one is a good one. The one with the bird one is a good early starter for a name of this episode.
All right.
Yeah. So, all right, cool. Final thoughts before we move on and talk about episode 8?
Just a good prep for what's coming next, because now there's no expectations for,
right.
Who could this possibly be? I don't know.
Exactly. And I tell you, by the time we get to episode 9, I was titillated. I was great. Heavy teasing for our next episode where we talk about that in the finale. So it's very exciting. Well, cool. All right. Well, I'll move on and talk about episode 8, which is Caves. The Lower Deckers go on a classic cave mission. My. So this is fun. Talk about taking a trope and turning it into essentially kind of 4 other episodes.
Right?
So yeah. So our gang gets set up on a very regular Star Trek kind of scenario. But we are set up by the fact that, at the beginning when Boimler sees that Mariner is going to be joining for a mission, say, hey, since we got promoted, we don't get teamed up a lot. And then our other 2 characters enter and they all go, yay. And so they're all going to be together, which has been, the first time in a minute. And they beam down to a cave situation where it's already a problem green slime is encroaching on them, and they know that it's going to dissolve them, but they got to figure out a way to get out of it. But as they're tinkering and as time is passing, they to pass the time, they say, hey, let's talk about other situations when we've been stuck in a bad spot because of caves. And so everybody's got a story except for Tendi, who keeps trying to tell a story about getting stuck in a turbo lift, and Mariner just keeps shutting her down, which was mean. And it's funny because this off-key voice, I do love how it ends, but we'll get to that. But yeah, we get fun vignettes of stories. The Boimler one to me was kind of forgettable because even though I was listening to it, I'm like, I'm thinking about the other two stories and about how much more fun they were than him arguing with the conspiracy theory guy, basically the right-wing nut job. Oh, Wolf 359 was an inside job. The Dominion War wasn't real. That guy, we got him.
Yeah, but he turned out to be right about the Vendorians.
Oh, yeah. Well, yes. Yeah. The broken clock is right.
Yeah, broken clock.
Yeah, he was the broken clock. That's a better name. He's the broken clock. So, he's the broken clock. So that was you're right. That was somewhat redemptive. But I did love the Rutherford story with the fantastic Dr. Tana, and
Rutherford's story was great.
I know, yeah, the clone baby, the two of them. And I love it how all these stories seem to take place fairly recently, like they all took place within the season, because all of our characters in their flashbacks were all lieutenants as opposed to being ensigns. So this was all within the last several weeks that these things had happened. So a lot of cave stuff happens. A lot of cave stuff. Better name. Anyway, I'm going to tinker with that. Why don't you jump in and talk about those other couple stories, please?
Yeah. So it's a lot of tropes, like we've talked about. I love how all of the caves on the animated show had the same layout, just like
like the old
action.
The old Stage 16, or if you think about like TOS's Devil in the Dark with the Horda, how those all very well lit caves, extremely well lit caves.
Yeah. I liked that Rutherford's solution to dealing with the big monster, the Graflax, was very similar to Devil in the Dark. It's like you just talk to it and figure out what's going on. And it's the children. It is exactly it's the same thing.
Exactly.
You can find one of my Screen Rant articles about that. Anyway,
you can. Plug.
Yeah, you can. But no, it's the same thing. The suddenly male pregnancy thing is evocative of Trip in Enterprise. Lower Decks has a way of bringing back the stuff that people kind of forget about or look down on and go, no, this is always part of Star Trek. You can't just forget about some of this dumb stuff because it's always been here. It's always going to be here. What was Mariners with the
time age
the age
spot,
thing.
And she was with the Delta shifters. Yeah, exactly.
It's showing how people can bridge their differences, though. I mean, all of them were like that. And it's them making new friends, but keeping their bonds together. And that's what Tendi's focusing on, because Tendi's the power of friendship.
Right.
And how important that is to her. Yeah.
The power of friendship for every. What was that from? It's Always Sunny? Nightman.
I don't know. I've never seen it.
Oh my gosh. There's a little homework assignment for you. That was that's a fun, very satirical. Let me see. How did my brother ever describe that show? It's like Seinfeld if all of them were sociopaths, which they kind of were, but you kind of take it to a next level. But anyway, not to get too far afield. But anyway,
back to Mariner's story too. Like that was, I don't want to just gloss over that one either, because that did show her kind of making amends with Delta Shift, and there's all that animosity that she had just grown for no good reason, and it's like, oh wait, you guys are people too, kind of, they're working together to find the solution, and she's not going to be buddy with them necessarily. She's still going to leave that guy's leg over there.
Oh, that was pretty gruesome. But we'll just have the doctor grow you a new one, because wouldn't it be fun to live in a time where you don't have to worry about, I've got a bum foot, right? Because I had an aroma in my foot. I would love it if I could just have a new right foot.
Yeah.
Give me a new right foot. You know what? Give me a new lower half of my spine where I had to have back surgery. I mean, oh God, I really do
Worked
look
for
forward to
Worf.
that. Yeah, I really do look forward to that possibility. We can all live to be 100 until our brains turn into
Yeah.
jelly or whatever.
The
You know,
doctor grew me a new kidney.
right? Yeah, by giving you a pill. Yeah, or Dr. McCoy himself, who lived to be in
Mhm.
his 100 and late
Oh yeah.
130s. Yeah, and then we saw him. He looked bad, but hey,
Well,
it's okay. Better to be alive, right? I
still
don't know.
kicking.
Still kicking. So cool. All right. Well, that's yeah. And then at the end, yeah. So okay. So Tendy's story being the last one, she tells a very fun tale that takes place after the end of the very first episode of the series, when they're in the bar and drinking, and they all end up stranded in a turbo lift together, and it talks about kind of melding their friendship together and stuff. But she ends up having to tell the story because the cave aliens in the present says, we will not let you go until we hear the green one's story. And she gets to tell that, and then they all get away, and yeah, I really dug it. I
Yeah.
really dug reaffirming of their own friendship, but then also how they all have separate lives too, and separate thoughts, and they're not just all they're growing and kind of in a lot of ways moving in their own direction and doing different stuff. But
Yeah, it's
they
really cool to
still,
see that after, these 4 seasons. I mean, all of these characters are, thought out from the beginning. But like they're adding more to them as we go. They're taking input from the voice actors.
right.
I know that Tawny Newsome has said on her own podcast that Mariner's just her at this point.
Yeah. Having met her a couple of times, that
yeah.
seems very simpatico. Yes, I agree. Yeah. That's
So
awesome.
it's cool to see them grow and change and still just be themselves.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, good. Yeah. Well, that wraps up talking about Lower Decks. And again, very excited in our next episode to talk about episodes 9, which we've seen at this point, and then episode 10, which we'll be seeing the week that you're potentially listening to this. So yeah, we'll be doing that, a big wrap up of the season, and then potential insights on what we might see in season 5. Whenever that might be. It could be being written right now, but as far as I don't know. Well, our voice actors can't go back and voice act. We know that, so the show is not going to be produced until that is over. So let's let's hope to.
And I believe they record first.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So
record and then do the animation.
Wouldn't really matter if they were animating it right now, but they could be writing it. But then again, that could be held up by a lot of things as well. So anyway, okay, let's move on. We are starting a new show in segment 2. And again, Jen, this is a very big deal for me. This is one of those, you've got a VHS tape running in your head. So you told me you didn't even have the opportunity to watch these episodes again, but I am willing to bet that it won't make any difference in your input.
No, I watched these when they came out.
No. That you haven't watched them recently. You didn't. You told me you didn't watch them recently.
I'm actually in the middle of my DS9 rewatch right now, so I watched these a couple months ago. So they're relatively fresh.
There you go. Okay, that's good. Yeah, no, I misunderstood when you said, "Well, I didn't even get a chance to watch these." I'm like, but you said, "But I feel very confident," and I absolutely believe you.
I mean,
and I believe you twice as much now.
Season 3 and 4 of DS9 are kind of what got me like into the constant like weekly watching of Star Trek was season 3 of DS9. So from here on out, I've seen these.
I totally understand. So set the table, fall of 1995, season 4 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So watching as these aired the first time, or did you watch them later on in life?
Watch them as they aired.
Watch them as they aired. Okay, wow. Yeah. I remember this very first episode. This was my sophomore year in college. I was home for a weekend. College and home is where I am right now, because I live in my childhood home. Was an hour apart, so it's not like, oh my God, it was worlds away or whatever it is. Was home for the weekend, and I was taping it, as I always did, with pausing out the commercials. But for some reason, there was a party going on. Like my brother was living at home at the time, had a bunch of friends over, but we were all watching it, which is just so awesome. Like 10 people sitting around in the den at my house, fire going in the fireplace, watching this fantastic episode. So anyway, I will jump in with the 2 parts, split into 2 parts for the sake of syndication, with appropriate trims, though, when you find it on Paramount Paramount Plus, which is, of course, where you find almost all of Star Trek. Plug for the people at Viacom who do provide screeners for their shows to me for the sake of doing this program. That is where you find most of Star Trek. We don't need to talk about Prodigy right now. But anyway, episodes in 1 and subsequently 2 of the season are The Way of the Warrior, directed by James L. Conway, written by the stellar team of Ira Stephen Bear, who I've met, super cool guy, Robert Hewitt Wolf, from the week of, remember it's syndication, so it's always week of September 30, 1995. A Klingon fleet arrives on its way to expand the Klingon Empire at the expense of the Cardassians in the face of the Dominion threat, and Worf is brought to DS9 to negotiate. What a weird description of this episode. I just don't know that I would really, because it kind of jumps you 3/4 through the first segment to like, okay, that's why the Klingons are there. Because it was all, well, we've come to, basically the way the episode starts up, it's been several months since the end of season 3, which was the episode where we found out the changelings have this widespread infiltration into the Alpha Quadrant. One of them was using the Defiant to try to start a war with a race called the Zencath here to rekindle a war. He was stopped to the last moment, but Odo had to kill him, which was the cardinal sin that will, trust me, play out later in the season of him being held responsible for that. But we see our crew executing battle drills on the station, just in case, there's really a changeling here. How do we find him? So on and so forth. And blammo, a bunch of Klingons show up, just decloaking around the station. We get, looking at our characters for the first time, it was promotion time over the summer. Dex got a promotion. Bashir got a promotion. Sisko shaved his head. Now he looks like Spencer from Spencer for Hire / Hawk, which was his character back on that show in the early 80s. And this all happened in the teaser, and a little bit more sprinkling of romance between him and Cassidy Yates. So they just can't seem to figure it out, but it's very cute. So yeah, we jump right in. We're introduced to J.G. Hertzler, who is Martok, who I will be meeting this week. He is a guest at Grand Rapids Comic-Con, the event that our chapter, the USS Grand Petoskey, is heavily involved in. And there is also a Klingon-centric event Friday of this week, and I'll give you a nice plug and some websites at the end of this to talk about the event. But it's at a bar establishment called the Bob here in downtown Grand Rapids, called the Klingon Drinking Party. Both he and Robert O'Reilly, who is Gowron, are both big guests at our show. And we'll be fun. It will be having a party. So yeah, if you're listening to me, if you live in West Michigan, or if you live anywhere in Michigan or anywhere at all that you want to jump in a car and drive, 7:30 p.m. downtown Grand Rapids at the Bob in the basement, Klingon drinking party. There, I've already saved the plug for the plug I said I was going to do at the end. So anyway, all right, I'm turning it over to you. So Martok shows up. What happens then?
Oh my gosh.
And should I keep talking?
You keep going.
Okay. So Martok shows up. He says that, well, we know about the changeling thing. We're here to help out. Here, everybody prove who they say they are. And he whips out his knife, cuts his palm, he's in the wardroom with Kieran and Sisko, makes them prove that they are who they say they are. And there's tons of Klingon on the station, and things just start getting worse. They're hanging around Quark's, making him nervous. A couple of them decide to beat up Garrick because Garrick is lippy, and they finally figure out, hey, we need boots on the ground. We need someone on the Klingon, someone who's a Klingon to tell us what's going on. Let's find Worf. That's right. It's what becomes the first of 2 Star Trek series in their 4th season, who decides to bring in a new character to spice things up. But yeah, Worf shows up. Now, this is, chronologically speaking, less than a year after the events of Star Trek Generations, where our Enterprise DTNG crew splits up because of the destruction of 3/4 of the Enterprise D. We know that the saucer is later salvaged. But yeah, Worf says, I've been on extended leave. I've been on Borath, the Klingon monastery. So, he's been
meditating
and kind of cooling out, trying to get in touch with his Klingon side. And he said, yeah, I'm back, but I'm really thinking about leaving Starfleet because I just don't know know where I belong, and blah blah blah. So that kind of sets the table for what this experience is going to be like with Worf. And so Worf gets in the mix. He roughs up a couple of Klingons, including Martok's son, to get Martok's attention. Can't get an answer out of him, but finally through one of an old family friend. And I love the scene because as I was sitting with, as I mentioned, all the people at this party back in 1995, one of the guys was a gearhead, a car buddy of my brother's, who said, while these guys were drinking, the containers that they're drinking out of look like those little containers of oil you find at like Pet Boys. You know what I mean? So I'm like, that's probably what the stuff tastes like.
Probably what they used.
Yeah, exactly. Worf gets the answer, finds out that the Klingons are, much like our description told us, they're there to invade Cardassia because they think, see my air quotes, they think that Cardassia has been taken over by the Changeling because there's been, political upheaval, blah, blah, blah. All signs point to unnatural change. But really, with the Klingons, and even Worf points this out, that it's an excuse. There are some hardliners that think that the Klingons have been kind of sitting around with their fingers in their ears for too long, not being very Klingon-y, going on, blowing stuff up, conquering. So this is just like a chance for them to do their jam. Let's go out, let's kill, let's conquer. And then very quickly, things are about to come to a head, and that's when Gowron shows up. So Gowron shows up, asks Worf to join him. Worf says no. So for like the fourth or fifth time, Worf is kicked out of Klingon. He's kicked out of the Klingon Club. They said, you know what? You are banished again. Or maybe this is just the second or third time. I don't know. So many ups and downs with Worf and his status within Klingon society. But this was kind of the second big one where they said,
at least the second. Yeah.
Yeah. You're excommunicated. You're not a Klingon anymore. And we're going to go on and do it. So they all the Klingons cloak, and then they take off towards Cardassia. And eventually, they decide that, hey, we have to go help, because the head military guy for the Klingons is Dukat, or for the Cardassians is Dukat. He's trying to escape with the civilian leaders. He gets stranded, and then our people go to rescue him. And now with the Starfleet in the fight, about peace between the Klingons and the Federation is over for good, and it's open warfare, and they rescue Dukat, and they're bringing him back to the station, and so now we're deep into probably the third act of the second part, and that's when we get the absolute kind of wish fulfillment of all time. They get back to the station, it's surrounded by Klingons, and they're gonna attack, and it's just CGI. Well, not even a CGI. Don't forget, this is all practical models. Some of it looks kind of clunky in retrospect because you can tell they're blown up AMT model kits, but whatever. But you have this great fight sequence because the station is totally retrofitted with like 1 billion photon torpedoes, bunch of phaser range. They're blowing up Klingon ships. Klingon ships are attacking them. Then the Klingons board the station. There's this massive fight back and forth. I was just enjoy watching this because it was it's taking Star Trek outside of the we're exploring strange new worlds and meeting fun aliens and having it just be a comic book of, like it's the Avengers versus the Masters of Evil, or it's, Magneto versus the X-Men. It was just knockdown, drag out, explosions, laser beams, punching, like Klingon swords and everything. Team ups that you would never expect, like the scene where Dukat and Garrick are teamed up side by side, protecting the council leader. So I wrote in my note, I almost never write notes, but I did this time. I wrote that this was the GOAT. This was absolutely the GOAT of anything I feel like you've seen in DS9 up to this time. It was a game changer. So, all right. And then at the end of it, okay, here's the end of my quickie summary. Not unexpectedly, instead of leaving for parts unknown, Sisko comes to Worf, makes this big appeal, and Sisko says, I'll come work for you. And he'd been wearing his TNG uniform this whole time, but at the end of it, he gets a DS9 uniform in red. He takes a job. He's the strategic operations officer. And so he's part of the gang now. He's part of the Peanuts gang now. So he's on board. And then, episode ends. All right. Take it away. Take it away.
I think the thing that you're talking about where it kind of feels like just sort of blowing up action figures is one of the reasons that this was not really my jam.
Okay.
And the thing is, when this first came out, I was not a fan of Worf. He was kind of my least favorite character on TNG, or like I just didn't get the Worf of it all. But like as
The
an
wharf.
adult,
Did you
and
just say you get the wharf of it all? New
yeah,
name of the episode
okay.
title. Keep talking.
Um, but like on DS9, he's given more of a chance to shine. We see more of him, and as an adult, I'm more aware of like, oh, the Klingon episodes. Sometimes I would skip them when I was a kid because I just didn't get it.
Yeah, fair.
But
I get
now
it.
they're really cool. They're really fascinating. Martok is great for one thing. Like he's the
Yeah,
Klingoniest Klingon that
right.
there is, and
And he's all gnarled up. Oh no, wait, no, he's not all gnarled up. Sorry,
not
I'm
yet.
talking forward. I'm talking forward,
Yeah,
and I don't want to spoil a big
yeah.
spoiler that doesn't come out for quite some time.
Not yet, but he's got this, this warrior soul, and
Yeah,
he's honorable and like in the way that it really ought to be.
right.
Um, and I really like that they establish him as that in this. And I think that bringing Worf in does spice things up.
Hmm.
Is his first meeting with Dax is in this one, or is it in the next one?
No. Everybody meets everybody in this
Yeah,
one.
everyone meets Worf
Yeah,
in this one. So yeah, you got that
yeah,
first encounter with Jadzia. So like you can
right.
see that kind of starting already. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. Um, and yeah, I don't. It's a good start to the season. It sets up a lot of what's going to be happening politically. We've got the dissolution of the Khitomer Accords as well,
Right.
so
Very
that
big.
kind of
Yeah.
puts us like that takes us back to an original series ish kind
Yep.
of mentality regarding the Klingons and
Right.
just
But
setting up all of
even
these players.
even scarier still because in TOS there was no open warfare. It
Right.
was because it itself was an
It's based on the Cold
analogy
War,
to
so it was
it's
all
based on
this
the Cold War. So yeah, it's always
secret,
sneaking
yeah,
and like, oh, we're not friendly. Every once in a while there'll be a dust up, but it's like
yeah.
we're still just cold warriors.
Yeah, but now and like this is all intentional on part of the Dominion too. Like they're trying to get us. I mean, we don't know that yet, but like
Right, right.
it's so clever how it all sets up what's to come over the next season and like the next couple of seasons. Whether that's intentional by the writers at this point or not, it's cool to see it start.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see DS9 really start to be what it is and what we
Hmm.
remember it being.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly correct. No, I nailed it. So yeah. Well, I love how you're saying it's just like blowing up. I actually said blowing up model kits, but blowing up action figures is better because you can see your little playmates. Like if you saw like the ship blow, you could see a couple of playmate Klingons go woo 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 like to the side of it. that would have been pretty amazing. Because this was unlike. Currently when it comes to action figures, as you can tell, obviously looking by my background, action figures are my thing. Star Trek has never again seen the proliferation of output in that way since the
I know, I'm
1990s
so sad. I
because
loved those action
those
figures.
those Playmates figures were not unlike Kenner's production 10 years earlier with the
Yeah.
Star Wars figures that you got in the early 80s. And it was from about, I think the Playmates line started I think in 1992 and it
Yeah.
pushed all the way through to just past the year 2000, but it had dwindled. Where Kenner, their line started in 1978 and ended very sharply in 1985. So it had a life expectancy that was, or it had a duration that was about the same. And of course, the Kenner figures are very famous and valuable. Where the
Mhm.
Playmates figures even carded. Hell, we have a couple of them in our charity auction, which is another very
Mhm.
big of our show.
I found
That
a box of them while I was moving.
I know.
I was like, I forgot I had these,
Oh
and they're
my
all
god.
just carded from the 90s
Oh
still.
my goodness. Well, yeah,
Uh,
I have a couple that we picked
yeah.
up. We did a grab bag from one of the vendors at Star Trek Las Vegas that we're doing in the auction, but I'm doing them for a starting price of $5 because that's all
Yeah.
that's all they're really worth. And I
Yeah.
would love it, attending our charity auction if somebody's really wants a Dr. Soren figure from Star Trek Generations and wants to pay $25 for him. Let's hope the bid gets up that high. We'll keep our fingers
Yeah.
crossed. But no, in the meantime, this
Yeah.
was I know we really got on a tangent. There were a lot of great figures that came from DS9, TNG, it's the only line of figures that has ever existed for Star Trek Voyager until EXO6 is now producing really high end
And I had
figures.
everyone from that first run of the Voyager figures. Everyone.
I did have the core crew of all of the lines, and then I had a lot of the
Yeah.
one-offs and the weird stuff, and I
Yeah.
sold the whole kit and caboodle when I was just clearing out stuff about 10 years ago to a local oddities or a kind of a secondhand store guy. So
Yeah.
I then went back, I collected a bunch more, I actually sold a bunch of those in our charity auction last year. Now all I have is the original TNG 10 back in a bridge model that a guy sold me. So I have the 92 bridge model. It's on
Wow.
the other side of where I'm recording. If I could flip the camera around, I'd show you.
Yeah.
But behind me, I have the other 4 figures. It was a Ferengi, a Borg, it was Gowron, and a Romulan. So I have the original 10 back. Yeah. All right. This was a long tangent. Let's move on to episode. We'll call it episode 3 because that's how it was numbered, but really second episode of the season. Jen, it's all yours.
All right. Episode 3, The Visitor. Directed by David Livingston, written by Michael Taylor. Original air date October 7th, 1995. An elderly Jake Sisko relates the story of how he lost his father to a temporal displacement accident.
Heartbreaker.
Ooh, yeah. This episode is one of the saddest, I think, because it's just all these missed chances and Jake's search for his father throughout time, and knowing that his whole life that he has to give it up so that in the past everything will be okay.
Right.
And this is a theme you see in Star Trek every now and again. Someone's descendants get erased from the timeline and all that stuff, but this really made it feel like you have this elderly Jake, you have this woman come knock on his door and asking, "Oh, are you Jake Sisko, the famous writer?" And he's like, "I was," and explains kind of the story of how he lost his father and how he's always been searching for him. And the thing is, Sisko is like kind of unstuck in time, so to speak, and he keeps reappearing at different intervals throughout Jake's life. And they find that he's tied to Jake, right?
Right. It's a rubber.
It's going to go back to normal.
Right. It's a rubber band through time is the analogy he gives. And when it gets slack, then Sisko pops up for a couple minutes and then stretches out again and he's gone. The young woman, trivia, her name is Rachel Robinson. That is Andy Robinson's daughter, Garrick.
Oh.
Yeah, I know, right? Kind of weird how they snuck it. And then, of course, the elderly Jake or Jake throughout time is actor Tony Todd, who is Worf's brother Kern. And also, because it's October Spooktober and April and I have been watching nothing but horror movies, he is the Candyman from Chicago. Candyman from Chicago. That whole movie is set, if you've never seen it, is set in one of the housing projects in Chicago. I've already forgotten. It's something green.
I'm aware of that, but I'm not.
Yeah, I don't think that you would enjoy it. Even, I mean, that movie, it's now 30 years old, is still quite horrific. So I don't think that and then there was a remake / continuation of it that came out a couple of years later, where the star of that was Denzel Washington's son, who's on a meteoric rise right now as an actor. But that's just us getting off on another tangent.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. But
the visitor. It's. I see it a lot on lists of like, oh, if you can show someone one episode, show them this one. I think it's kind of a interesting sort of one-off episode.
Right.
Not really the best one to show someone as a first episode. You kind of have to know more about Jake and Ben and how important their relationship is to each other to fully appreciate it, I think. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's just so removed from what else DS9 is.
Right.
But it's a really, really good episode. It's really good. It's
I could
Twilight Zone.
Yeah, I could see how it makes someone's, show them this one, because again, it's a very Star Trek-y kind of concept. Time travel, alt reality, it's very sci-fi. But again, by what's driving it, being that we're also very familiar with why, Jake and his father are so close. And father-son stuff always touches me in a very special place. I've talked about this on all of the different SFU shows I've been a part of because of my own relationship with my dad and my relationship with my two sons and having, perils and pitfalls and some tough times. That's always, when Peter and I are, for example, are going through Ron Moore's Battlestar Galactica right now over on the Patreon, another reason to visit and check it out. Same thing with the Adamas, the father and the son on that. That's a tough one, but this is a great father-son relationship. There's no real cracks in it, but it's very interesting to see how Jake disregards all the wonderful things in his life to continue pursuing this obsession. And it's very sad to think about, he put off moving forward with his life by leaving the station until he was forced to do so, in this alternate timeline, 4 or 5 years after the incident. And then, he finally starts to put it aside. His father doesn't reappear to him again. He figured that's, he's gone now for good. So I'm going to move on with my life. And he starts writing, and then he gets married, and, you see his life, another 15, 20 years down the road. And Nog is still in his life. Nog is a Starfleet captain or Starfleet commander at that point, but has moved forward in his career in Starfleet, which does happen in the regular show. So, it's interesting from a costuming standpoint. It's interesting to me how those uniforms that we first saw in All Good Things, they're one pieces, but mostly colored up top with the rank pips on the breast and the black stripe and that badge, are never made canonical unless I'm mistaken, because we only see them here. We see them in the series finale of Voyager, so that's going forward to this point, and we see them in this episode. So they, for some reason, because of changes in the timeline, nobody dreams up one of those uniforms. Maybe the guy who designed those uniforms got hit by a bus for some reason that would have been prevented.
I think it's an interesting... Just a note from a costuming standpoint is that when you see those, they show you, oh, this is the future.
Yeah.
And it could be that that's a note for this is a future that will never come to pass, because that's what happened in Voyager and in All Good Things when we saw those uniforms before too.
All of those timelines were wiped out. Yeah.
Yeah. So were they the same timeline that got wiped out? I don't know, but they could be, but I mean, maybe it's just something that they're closer together on a branching timeline, that they're going to have some similarities. But it's just interesting to note from a costume standpoint. I noticed something about the badges too in Future Imperfect and TNG, but that's a different topic for
it was because Future Imperfect was a holodeck.
It was not even anything.
Where the Worf episode, which you just mentioned, which is Parallels, has those same badges and the badge with the rank, but that one has the badges with the rank bars behind it and the neck pip. So that was because you saw Wesley as Chief of Security of the Enterprise. Another one of those, it was the Voyager season 5 Timeless, where they still wore the TNG uniforms, but they had that All Good Things badge. So there's your giveaway.
Yeah,
that those two style of badges always mean that it's something that's not going to stick. That's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. But anyway, back to the episode. In the end of it, obviously, Jake is able to figure out that at the end of his own life, he's able to snap back, 70 years to the point of the accident or however old he was and prevent it from happening, which he does. And then obviously things go on kind of the normal way. So, great episode. But you're right. I think I'm of two minds about it. Great sci-fi concept for someone who's never seen Star Trek before, but to get the nuances of the characters, it's a little more difficult, but to appreciate the nuances of the characters is also in some ways kind of universal. So I see both sides. I see like 2/3 of an argument there where the last third is like, but this isn't really Star Trek. It's science fiction plus regular people stuff, which is something that Star Trek excels at. But then the Star Trek part of it is not really very easily accessible. So I definitely agree with you there. So, all right. Okay. Moving on. Episode 4 is Hippocratic Oath. The director is Rene Auberjonois, Odo himself. Story by Nicholas Correa. Haven't heard of him. And Lisa Klink, who goes on to be a powerful writing force on Star Trek Voyager. So this was potentially one of her introductions to Star Trek in general, because October 14th, the 95-96 season would have been the beginning of the second season of Voyager, and I don't think she was part of the staff at that point, but I could be wrong. She also did the teleplay for the episode, and again, it's from October of 95. Bashir is captured with Chief O'Brien by a rogue group of Jem'Hadar on a planet of the Gamma Quadrant who are attempting to overcome their genetic addiction to Ketracel White, which, as we know, is how they are controlled by the Dominion. Their leader, Garanagar, who is a great actor who we see in a lot of other Star Treks, whose name is going to escape me. He was, oh my God, in Voyager, in the very first episode, he was one of the Starfleet guys who didn't get killed. Lieutenant Ensign so-and-so. Oh, it's going to kill me. Not Scott Thompson. Oh, I don't know. I would look it up, but I would feel bad for looking it up.
I don't know.
But anyway, Garanagar is able to survive without it and forces Bashir to try to find out why. And then we get a B story back on the station. Worf is finding it difficult to leave security matters to Security Chief Odo, a very like kind of sitcom-y, kind of like, oh boy, I just can't, this was the literal definition of a sitcom premise was the B story to this. So
it kind of was, because there was misunderstandings.
Exactly. Yeah, it was your Three's Company of DS9. Like, oh man, I don't know what's going on here. So anyway, a story with Bashir and O'Brien on this planet. So Bashir and O'Brien at this point have finally become like the best of best buds. They are super duper buddies. And they're tossed in this situation where they have diametrically opposed viewpoints. Bashir, as a physician, sees these Jem'Hadar suffering without the one thing that keeps them alive. But again, can't really crack the mystery of why the survivor, Scott, oh my God, the guy, the dude, the head dude, Granagar, Scott something. I'm going to call him Scott something Jem'Hadar. Scott something Jem'Hadar, why he's alive, and the other people that he can't really figure out why. So Bashir, as a scientist and as a medical and as someone who has that empathy that comes with being a physician, wants to help them, where O'Brien, who's practical and he's a soldier and he's a survivalist, a realist, realize that there's no way that he and Bashir are going to survive the situation if they hang around. So he focuses on helping them escape. And this is when the two of them come nose to nose, and Bashir asserts his authority as, the officer versus the enlisted man, this was sidebar, first time when Chief O'Brien was identified by his actual rank. When the Jem'Hadar addressing the Down at the beginning says, you are a chief petty officer known as a non-com or non-commissioned officer in the military parlance, had never been addressed. Don't forget the long legacy of what the hell is Chief O'Brien, because when he first appeared in Encounter in Farpoint, the very first episode of TNG, he wore an ensign's pip, didn't get a name until the second season of TNG. He went from red to gold, still wearing an ensign's pip. Throughout the second season of TNG, he wore two pips, indicating a rank of lieutenant, but was never addressed as anything but O'Brien or Chief O'Brien or Miles eventually. And it wasn't until season 6 of TNG, just prior to the beginning of DS9, that his two pips went down to a single hollow pip, indicating that he was a senior NCO, or basically a chief petty officer. Never addressed, never. And it's not saying like, it's not like he was Mariner and he got busted because he's a rogue or whatever. It was just,
he was a background dude. No one expected that he would become Chief Miles Edward O'Brien.
The most important person in Starfleet history, let's not forget, as identified by Lower Decks. So anyway, I like this. I love seeing them, coming to a showdown. But at the end of it, O'Brien disobeys orders and does what he thinks is right to save both of their lives, which is true, because at the end of
which is a very Star Trek thing to do. It's, you have to follow what you believe in. And in this case, both of them are doing what they believe in and what they believe to be right. And
except for what Bashir
I like
believes,
that it's not.
Bashir would have gotten them killed, without a doubt.
It would have. But nonetheless, that's still what he's trying to do. And because he's Bashir, he's like, I'm going to find the solution for this. Because he loves a mystery. And
he's a Superman, which nobody knows yet.
Right. Yeah. So he's like, if I can't do this, no one can. Right. I'm going to do it. O'Brien is like, we got to go. We got to, they're going to kill us. Which again, like you said, practical. But I also like that they can disagree and it doesn't actually affect their friendship. They're
Right.
still such good friends that it withstands this uh, different viewpoint, different approach to this. And I mean, it's still fairly early, so Bashir's still kind of naive and
Yeah.
idealistic.
Right.
He does get sort of hardened by the war, like everyone does.
Right.
But it's something in his character that I always liked, that he
Yeah.
was so optimistic and so like just determined. And the interesting thing about the B story in this one is that it echoes the A story, which a good B story should do,
True.
in
True.
that Worf and Odo have these very different approaches to security, and both of them are sticking by what they know and what they believe. So, Worf is this very by the book, and Odo has these other ways of doing things,
Not
through
in the
using
Starfleet ways.
quark
Yeah.
and using sort of these, non traditional methods that still get the job done and get it done better, really,
Right. Right.
than Worf would have done, because DS9 is a different environment.
Right. Right.
And that's something that I think all of the characters have to remember, in a way, is that it is a different environment. It's a former Cardassian station. It's, they're working with the Bajorans. It's not fully Starfleet. So, the methods that Worf is used to are not really going to work.
Right.
And some of the stuff that Bashir really wants to do, not really going to work either.
Right, exactly correct. My,
Yeah.
my. So yeah, good stuff. Yeah, and
Yep.
definitely good breakdown of that second aspect. So cool. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, we're doing great so far as great episodes of the season, and I think it just rambles on into the next episode, which is episode 5, Indiscretion. Directed by LeVar Burton. Look at that. We got stars
Yay.
directing this season. I love it. Story by Tony Marbury and Jack Trevino, which not two names I recognize, so possibly from the slush pile. But we get Nicholas Correa, who was from the previous episode, did the teleplay. So don't know much about him. Maybe he was a story writer who just didn't work out, or you just don't hear anything about him. Again, from October of '95, forced to bring Dukat along on a personal mission to investigate the fate of the Cardassian prison ship Ravenok, which disappeared 6 years previous. Kira discovers the real reason her old enemy wants to accompany her. And the B story. We got a lot of good A story, B stories going on in the early part of the season. So on the station, off of the station, Cisco appears to have reservations about Cassidy Yates coming to live on the station. And here's only the second note I've ever given on any of these. It's a big step.
It is a big step.
It is a big step. Wow, this is an important episode which sets off some really pivotal plot points that dog for the rest of the series. You get Dukat has always been pretty damn one-dimensional. He's a scumbag, he's a warlord, he's a sociopath, he's a killer.
I keep calling him a bad penny in my head. Like, he just keeps coming back.
Right.
Why are you here? He's throwing his weight and his ego around and flirting with Kira just inappropriately.
So gross.
And here we find out why.
Yeah, exactly. And we get even more about that further on down the road. But what you actually find out is that there is, and again, he's not human, so you say there's a human side to him, but there is something about him that is quasi-redemptive while at the same time fantastically self-serving, is that he had one of several Bajoran mistresses. He has another Bajoran mistress we find out about later on that I know we won't cover that episode for well over another year, so I don't even want to spoil it. But anyway, he had a Cardassian mistress by which he fathered a daughter who is now 13, who was on this prison ship, not as prisoners, but they were hitching a ride in order to go to another Cardassian planet where they could seek refuge, because the mother was Bajoran and the child is obviously half and half, and a Bajoran and a Cardassian.
There's no real place that she would be welcome.
Exactly. And again, that was covered very heavily in the season 2 episode of this show called Cardassians, that had to do with these Cardassian war orphans. This is the same. Yeah, this is the same bit. The Cardassian out of wedlock multi species children are also not exactly top shelf as far as their societal acceptance. So obviously they find this crashed ship. It's on a desert planet, and it's our first introduction in person to the Breen, which are these. I identified them immediately. It's take Leia's character from Return of the Jedi as Boush the bounty hunter, take that outfit, times it up by about 5, and you get like a big lanky version of that outfit of a characters that don't speak any perceptible language that we're ever able to understand, because the Breen get much more developed in season 7 of this show when they become part of the Dominion War. But in this case, they're running a prison camp, and what Dukat says is that I need to find my daughter, and I unfortunately need to kill her, because if I take her back, my standing in society and my relationship with my everyday family will be destroyed because of my indiscretion. Name of the episode. Nailed it. So you watch him struggle with that, because again, he's like, I have a daughter, but I got to kill her. And Kira says, I'm not going to let you do that. And then when it comes right down to the very TV-like moment where he's pointing the gun at her, and she says, I always dreamed of you coming to save me, but if you don't really want to save me, you probably ought to just shoot me. And what does he do? He doesn't shoot her. He says, I was wrong. I love you. And they rescue her. Kira's friend, of course, who they actually went there to rescue, is dead. So, hey, that's fine. Whatever. But that was never really ended up being the point at the end of it. So great A story, and at the end of it, they end up back on the station, and Dukat takes her back to Cardassia. But you're right, even at the end of it, she's like, well, hey, let me know how it goes. And Dukat's like, oh, I totally will let you know how it goes. Because he's still flirting with her and being disgusting. But anyway, that's the very heavy A story. The B story is Sisko and Cassidy. They have this evolving relationship, but you know what? She's a cargo pilot. She doesn't live on the station. She's there. She's gone. So he's got like this long distance relationship, and he's kind of down with that, because it's not kind of too much for him.
Doesn't have to commit too much.
Doesn't have to work too hard. It's not like he's seen other. He's not like he's seen other people, but it's like, he's a widower, and he just seeing someone is very difficult for him, and he has very serious feelings for Cassie, but he's just not ready to take that. So he does let slip when talking to her, when she comes to him and says, hey, I might get a job with the Bajoran government, and then I can have a spot on the station. And isn't that super cool? And he says, what does he say?
It's a big step.
Oh, man. And nothing's funnier than when he's relating the story to Dax and Dr. Bashir, and they both go, well, it is a big step, but basically, you're a moron. And Cassidy, when Sisko says that, she's like, I'm not even going to take the job, forget it. And so he finally gets his head out of his ass and says, hey, you know what? This is a me thing, not a you thing. Don't listen to me. It's just, it's tough for me because my dead wife, blah, blah, blah. And she says, you're a moron, but it's cool. I forgive you. Let's move on. So, I like it. Yes. So cool duality between the super heavy, super serious A story and your somewhat frivolous, kind of punchline driven, but ultimately kind of character building for Sisko B story. So great episode.
Yeah, it keeps the levity in there. It keeps it from getting dragged down too much by that heavy A story.
Yeah. Big time. My goodness. Yeah, cool. All right. Now, number 6 is going to be all you, because when we were talking about this on our team group chat, setting this up a couple weeks ago, you're like, oh, it was my moment for, and I won't say what it was.
Yeah, a little bit.
I'll leave that to you if you want to say it or you don't want to say it. I don't want to toss it out there. But anyway, take it away with episode 6, please.
Episode 6 is Rejoined, directed by Avery Brooks, story by Renee Echevarria, teleplay by Ronald D. Moore and Renee Echevarria.
Big stars.
Aired October 28th, 1995. Dax is reunited with Lenara Khan, whose previous host was the wife of one of Dax's former hosts, Tarius Dax, and the two struggle with their feelings for one another.
Whoa, oh my.
Now, in this episode, there's this taboo in Trill society, which was never really referenced before or since, but it stands in as the taboo against a same-sex relationship.
Correct, Amando.
Star Trek is always about the era in which it airs or is produced. Mm-hmm. And this being 1995, this is a moment for LGBT representation on television and kind of everywhere. I believe this is kind of right before Ellen comes out. I mean, it's that
a couple years,
kind of era, right? Yeah. You're getting more awareness of this. So, and Star Trek has never really dealt with same-sex relationships directly. You had an episode in TNG, The Outcast, that was meant to be that,
Yep.
but didn't quite get that. So this was the first time. And the taboo in Trill society is that there is no reassociation between hosts of the symbionts that were previously connected.
Right.
Now,
which, if I can jump in, because we covered this
please.
very, very recently in the first appearance of the Trill, which was at the end of season 4 of TNG. I think that was Peter and I talking. I don't know if it was me and you. I think it was Peter and me talking because it was only a few weeks ago. That the Trill in that episode immediately wanted to hook up with Beverly again. So it was not an issue at all.
Now, the difference, though, is that Beverly's was not a Trill.
Correct, Mundo. Okay, that's fair.
When you see this happening with Dax, there's no stigma against Jadzia or Ezri associating with Sisko, who was one of Curzon's friends.
Right.
And the reassociation with, yes, Ezri can come to DS9. That's later on down the line, of course. But the taboo seems to be between Trill hosts, specifically hosting symbionts that
they don't want the slugs. They don't want the slugs kissing.
Yeah, the idea being that the symbionts are just going to create this like dynasty of not having new experiences because they're just going to keep on
doing the same
reuniting
thing
with the same people over and over again.
Right.
So it's not like illegal, but it's might as well be. It's very frowned upon. They say if they do this, they're going to get exiled.
Right.
And they're fighting with their feelings for each other, and they're wondering, like, is this Trias's memories coming up? And there's some closure to that relationship because Jadzia is able to explain what's going on, what Trias was thinking when he died.
Right.
But the more time that they spend together, and it's really cute. I mean, they have chemistry.
Yeah.
But they do decide to have a physical relationship, and it is the first same-sex kiss on Star Trek.
Yeah, and really in large part to, I think, broadcast television of any kind, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty close anyway.
It's a lot was happening around this time.
Right. It was if it was first, it was by a nose, or if it was second, it was by a nose.
Yeah.
It was one of the first, absolutely, without a doubt.
It was early, and there was such a kerfuffle about this episode.
God. I remember Entertainment Weekly TV Guide, because back in the day, people read magazines. It was a thing. Yeah. I know. I had a subscription to Entertainment Weekly from about 1996 on and off until it ceased to exist, which was about 5 or 6 years ago, if that. Okay. So yeah, it was one of those like, hey, you read it and then it ended up on your pile of magazines in the bathroom, and that's where you read it the rest of the time. And yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, this was like, it's the big controversy and stuff. And again, maybe because this was a syndicated program, that made it was, and again, as Ira Stephen Bear said on one of the talks I heard him do when we were on the Star Trek cruise earlier this year, people weren't paying attention to what we were doing at all, he said. So that probably made it very easy for them to blast a script like this through and then get it produced and then, get it on the air. And so much the better, because it's a wonderful, very Star Trek kind of story, the morality play, what's at the center of it. And ultimately, kind of like the one of the episodes we talked about just even last week when we were wrapping up season 4 of TMG, the Half a Life, with David Ogden Stiers as Dr. Timison and his society that everyone has to die at age 60, kind of like, like Logan's Run, which is a great sci-fi movie from the 70s, which I referenced at the time, in that episode, because he's, falls in love with Waxana Troy, and she's like, this is barbaric. He said, but it's the way of my people. And for a while, he's not going to do it. But then ultimately he realizes that, that I want to be with my wife, or I want to, honor my society. And that's ultimately kind of what bleeds right back into this one. So again, yes, a very Star Trek-y kind of, making a difficult choice, impossible situation. I think they pulled it off well. And it wasn't,
and it doesn't last, it's a one and done episode. Lenara doesn't come back.
Right.
But this was an important episode for me too. I mean, I love Dax. Like she was my favorite character on
Yeah.
DS9. Um, and for me, it made me realize that this was relevant to my life as well because I'm bi, and this made me realize that this is something that you could be to
Hmm.
see it on TV, and it's so important to have that representation that you still have on Star Trek with your non-binary and trans characters on Discovery, and
Hmm.
that you're more just more queer representation on Star Trek, and just more representation of all kinds. You have a hijabi on Lower Decks, just in the
Yeah.
background, and that's so important too. Um, the future is for everyone,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Star Trek shows us who we are
Hmm.
and who we can be. And for, you know, preteen Jen watching this um, alone, right?
Hmm.
And I see them kiss, and I'm like, oh, oh, they can do this. Now there's still the taboos, there's still the warnings against it,
Yeah.
but it was eye opening.
Yeah.
Um, because Jadzia has, relationships with men. She talks about men a lot, but, in any case of her having a relationship with a woman is in the context of a previous host who is male
Right.
having a relationship with a woman. But it's like it doesn't matter, um, and it doesn't matter to her. So does it have to matter to me?
Right. Right.
And
Exactly.
it doesn't.
So, in my limited understanding of you know things of the bisexual and the trans and the queer community,
Mhm.
because the symbiotes are not human, is my understanding of pansexuality, would that be more applicable to the symbiotes?
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah,
symbiotes themselves are pansexual, the actual
yeah.
physical slug. There, I
Yeah.
got that
Well,
one
they
right.
don't have a
Gold star for me.
gender. As
Yeah.
far as I understand, the symbionts don't
No, not at
necessarily
all.
have a gender. I mean, it's a
Right.
social construct anyway, so it doesn't
It's true.
really
It's true.
matter.
Yeah, it's really true. Pansexual Symbiosis Commission. There you go. On Trill. That's no, it's fascinating. You're right. So
Yeah,
this is the most in some ways Star Trek of all the segments we've talked about in this episode, I think, because
yeah,
it's the very best of us, showing that all things are possible. And what I've always maintained is that, love is love, and rules that tell
it
you
is.
who to love and who not to love are superfluous. And that's the real construct, is someone else
Yeah.
telling you how to feel and what love means. There. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Oh, that's totally, that's epic, and it's awesome. And I do like it that it's a one-off, because maybe this wouldn't be a great enduring storyline. Maybe this was really best told in the way that it was told. Lenara does get a mention at the end of season 5 as one of the designers of the device that they try to use to collapse the wormhole, which ultimately would
Yeah.
have worked, but it didn't. But yes, yeah, Dax does give her a shout out and say, well, she was always better at theory than in practice. So it was more of a dig. Ouch. That's stone cold. Anyway, okay. Well, wrapping up these 6, or rather 5 episodes, because of the double parter, let's give a favorite and a least favorite. And I'm going to make you go first.
Okay. Um,
Or I'll
my
let you,
favorite is
or I'll let you a
Rejoined.
second. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, my favorite is
Okay.
Rejoined. Again, for all of those personal reasons that I've mentioned, it's an important episode to me personally. Um, Also, just love Dax.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, they're all really good. Uh, maybe Indiscretion as a least favorite,
Yeah.
but again, they're all really good. It's just Ducat is not my favorite in general.
Yeah.
So,
I hear you.
but yeah,
I would
Yeah.
be fearful if someone said Ducat was their favorite. That would be more scary to me. I again for the reasons that you said, you're like meh. I just will remember, and maybe this is me looking back with rosy colored glasses, but the way the Warrior with the
Yeah.
the explosion of action figures and model kits and stuff, just really spoke to me. And seeing Worf, which was like TNG is back, and especially after how kind of disappointed a lot of us were with Star Trek Generations at the time, it was great to see one of the more interesting characters of TNG, because again we had our real strong characters and our real characters in TNG. I always really enjoyed Worf, so it was great and then to throw him in the mix with the TNG characters and let's see how this spices things up. You knew that more exciting things were coming when it was done, and you knew it was going to stick around. And I love seeing all the Klingon stuff, and like I said, I enjoyed the exploding action figures. That's thumbs up for. I would almost change the name of the episode to that. I'll have to think about that. Although you usually end up naming the episode something great. So this episode right now is "Don't Get the Worf of It All." I can't change that. That's too good. That's too good. So for a least favorite, I don't want to say. I mean, the Visitor is not one I go back to a ton. Even though it's great, but I thought the whole episode, there's 3 minutes of it or the real episode and not just some the alt timeline ones kind of wear on me. While I think it was a great story moment for story moments, the episode itself I just wasn't thrilled with, because you're like, oh, all this stuff happened, and then there's those damn uniforms again playing with my heart. Those uniforms have been produced, but not by the costuming vendor that we like, not by Cosmar.
Yeah.
Give them a free plug. They never produced one. So I thought, you know what? I just don't like having my heart jerked around by costumes. So that's a big thumbs down for me. Oh, my goodness. All right, cool. Well, that is the end of our episode, and we will be back next time to talk about the next 7 segments, because we go 6, 7, 6, 7 in order to get through 26 episodes. So the next 7 in the next one. But Jen, so glad to have you back in the saddle. It's been a minute, and for a full episode, it's been a minute. So hopefully now that you are settled in your big move, that you'll be back on hopefully a more consistent basis. So I love it. And we'll get
for a given degree of settled.
It's settled for as it were. You're sitting on a couch that's not being moved by someone.
Yes.
So that's a good thing. Well, in the meantime, obviously, and then we'll talk about doing some more stuff over on the Patreon as well. But where do people find you in a place that is not here?
Yes. So I have a Linktree, which is linktree.com/JenWatsonArt. On the Linktree, you can find links to my Etsy shop, my Instagram, my Facebook page for my art, and of course, my Screen Rant articles, where I write about Star Trek.
Yay!
Which is really exciting.
We do.
So go check those out, please. And let me know what you think. You can message me on Instagram if you want to. That's where I'm at. And you can find all my other projects.
Very good.
At my Linktree, Jen Watson. Linktree.com/JenWatsonArt.
And the good news is it's also in the show notes, as I leave it there permanently. So, and we are, I will say, from the Secret Friends United family, we're super, super proud of the work you do on Screen Rant. So,
thank you.
Glad to have you as part of our team, big time. You can find me as always over on X/Twitter at the C3. Go ahead and spell it out. I am doing my best to get active on Threads, because Todd keeps talking about it every time we do our main show. That's C3 Carpenter, spell it out. That is also my Facebook, which I really don't mess with that much. But it's also Instagram, which I'm trying to do a bit more, but it's usually just a picture of me working out or a picture of my cats or something. I mean, it's not great content. I'm not going to lie to you, but I am there. Most importantly, my lovely wife, April, and I do run the USS Grand Petoskey. We are one of the biggest chapters of Starfleet, the international Star Trek fan club in the world. We're based here in West Michigan. And as I was talking about a little bit earlier, we are going to be a very big part of the Grand Rapids Comic-Con here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, this upcoming weekend, should you be listening to this when the episode first comes out, November 3, 4, and 5 at the DeVos Place, downtown Grand Rapids in Michigan. On Friday night, I was talking about the Klingon drinking party, which I'm very excited about. It's a $5 cover at the door at the BOB, or the big old building, the Bob, which is right at the middle of town. Can't miss it. Down in the basement. We're going to be drinking and hanging out with honest to God Klingons. The actors that played Martok and Gowron will be hanging out with us, and costume members of our chapter, including myself and my wife, and a couple of the other people on our senior staff will be there with us. Most importantly, on Saturday night, after the show closes, up in Grand Gallery Overlook E will be our second annual chapter meeting, which is not going to have a ton of content outside of our silent auction to benefit the Make-A-Wish Foundation of Michigan. As I've talked about in the past, I had a young son, Parker, who passed away in 2020 due to a lifelong illness at the age of 13. Before that happened, he and his brother and my ex-wife were able to take a trip to Disney World through the auspices of the Make-A-Wish of Michigan. So since we've had the chapter since 2019, we have been steadily raising funds to donate right back to Make-A-Wish of Michigan, to make other Make-A-Wish kids be able to have their dreams come true. Last year, we were able to raise over $1,100. We were gifted over 60 items by members of our chapter that at face value are looking at about $1,300 at starting base value for the silent auction. I'm hoping to double that number. Also, back at our booth, which will be throughout the con, we do have tribbles for sale, which has been very, very successful in raising money. We also have a number of other donated items, which will be available at the booth. But we would love to see you there. Please visit the Grand Rapids Comic-Con website to purchase tickets. Tickets can also be purchased at the door. And I believe that local shop sales have wrapped up, but you can find tickets there. And then if you stop by the booth, we'd love to talk about joining our chapter as well. But anyway, that's the biggest plug I've ever done for the chapter on this show. But with that, I will bid you adieu. Friends, thank you as always for joining us. I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring, and to keep on trekking.
And be the Starfleet you want to see in the world.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server, or follow @SecretFriendsU on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.